Hello, this is Domenico with Easynomics, and we're going to do a paper 3 calculation for the unit of macroeconomics, calculating the unemployment rate from a set of data. So on a paper 3 exam, and even on a paper 2, so standard level students might be asked to calculate something similar to this with data provided on a paper 2, paper 3. Here we have table 3, employment status data for the U.S. civilian population in the month of June 2023. And in column 1, we have the total working age population in thousands. So this is 266.801 million if we put in the extra 1,000 here. Column 2, population of working age that is either employed or unemployed as a percentage. So this is the percentage of those that are employed or unemployed coming from this number. 62.5751% of this total working age population is employed or unemployed. And in column 3, we have the number of people who are employed in the thousands. So we add the extra 1,000 here. It's actually 160.994 million people. So from that data, you should be able to calculate the unemployment rate. So if you had a question asking you, using the information provided, calculate the unemployment rate for the US in June 2023, how would you do that? I'm going to ask you to pause the video and look at that data and consider the formula for the unemployment rate and write out how you would solve this question. Pause the video, attempt this question, and then unpause, and we'll see how we can calculate the answer. Go ahead and pause the video now. All right, so let's go through how would we calculate this. First, it's asking us, let's be attentive to what the question's asking us. It's asking us to calculate the unemployment rate. So the first thing you should think about is the formula. There is no formula worksheet that you're given. You must know this, you should have this kind of memorized. So the unemployment rate is a simple formula. It's equal to the number of people that are actively seeking a job but aren't able to find a job. So the number of unemployed in the population divided by the total number of people that are part of the labor force. That number multiplied by 100 will give us a percentage, and that will give us the unemployment rate. Now, a couple other things. What is the labor force? Let's keep in mind that the labor force is going to be equal to the number of unemployed plus the number of people that are employed. So the sum of the number of people in the population that are employed plus those that are actively seeking a job but haven't found a job, the unemployed, that combination will give us the labor force. So here in column 2, it says the population of working age that is either employed or unemployed. So this is revealing our labor force. Here we have the sum of the employed and unemployed. It's 62.5751% of what number? And it's of this number over here. Here we have the total working age population, all those that are above the age of 16 that can work. But from that number, only 62.5751 are employed or actively seeking work. So we're going to figure out the labor force by considering 62.5751% of this number. Okay. And then we have this third column of the employed. All right, so the number of employed, the number of unemployed, how we're going to figure that out. So one way of figuring out the unemployment, the number of unemployed, here we'll use another color. The number of unemployed would be equal to our labor force minus the employed, which we have right here. So we have what we need to figure out this formula. The number of unemployed is going to be the labor force minus the employed, but the labor force is a percentage of this number. So let's create the formula. So the unemployment rate is going to be equal to 62.5751% of the total number of people that can work, 266.801 million. I'm going to turn this value into a decimal value. So the decimal value of that percentage is 0.625751. This decimal value multiplied by 100 is 62.5751. Fine. I'm going to multiply that decimal value of a percentage by the total number of working age population, which is 266,801. And let's be mindful that that is our labor force. All right, so that is, this number that we're calculating here is going to be our labor force. And we're trying to figure out this number. So we have the labor force minus the employed. Fine. So we have this in brackets to give us the labor force minus the employed, which is 160,994. Okay, and that will be divided by the total labor force, which again will be this number, 0.625751 times 266,801. Again, that's going to be our labor force. I'm just going to make a note here so we're mindful of what these numbers mean. That is our labor force. So we have an accurate formula. Unemployment rate is the number of unemployed divided by the labor force. So here we have the labor force being 0.625751 of 266,801. And the number of unemployed became calculated as the labor force minus the employed. So here we have the employed over here. We're calculating the labor force as a percentage of this number. So here we have 0.625751 times 266,801 minus the employed. It's going to work. That's going to solve that question. And then all of that multiplied by 100. So let's solve it. All right, so this would be equal to 62.5751, 0.625751 of that number is going to give us 166,950.99. That's going to be our labor force minus the employed that we have here, 160,994. That divided by the labor force, which is 166,950.99. And that number times 100. So what does that work out to? Keep going. So that's going to be equal to 5,956.99 divided by the labor force, which we have 166,950.99 times 100. And that will be equal to 0.035,681.035,681 times 100, which is going to be equal to 3.5681%, or on a test, they typically ask you to calculate up to the second decimal value. So 3.568556. So that'll be, actually 56. That's going to round up to 6. 3.6%. So here we have the unemployment rate. We have calculated this. So the unemployment rate for the US in the month of June in the year 2023 is going to be 3.6%. So hopefully that was a breakdown of how you would solve that question. If you have any questions regarding that, you can comment that below. Don't forget to subscribe and to like. And I would also like to show you where this data came from. This is real data coming from, well, let's understand the size of the labor force. This is the U.S. total population from the United States Census Bureau. The U.S. total population is at 335,887,447. Of that total population, this is our civilian non-institutional population that is employable, 266.801 million. And the civilian non-institutional population is specific to meaning this. Civilian non-institutional population are people above the age of 16 or older in the 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, that are not inmates of institutions, penal or mental facilities, homes for the aged, and who are not on active duty in the armed forces. So those above the age of 16 are part of the civilian non-institutional population, 266.801 million. But of that number, our labor force, those that are employed and unemployed, is only 166.951 million. Here we have this participation rate, which is simply 166.951 divided by 266.801. 62.6% of this population is actively part of the labor force. And of that number, we have 160.994 people that are employed, which is the data that I used here, 160.994. Here we have the total working age population of 266.801, which we see here. And then we have the number of unemployed, 5.957 million, or 3.6, which was our final working. You have accurately calculated the unemployment rate for the United States at 3.6% from this data provided. I'll provide links below to these government websites. Graphically, we can see the unemployment level rising over time as the population, U.S. population grows. We see that there's dips during recessions. These gray columns are recessional periods. Here we see that the employment levels at 160.994 million, which we had here. And we also have the unemployment rate going up and down with the business cycle. Here we see that the unemployment rate is 3.6% at June 2023, which again, you calculated. And that's it. I'll provide some more paper 3 workings over the next few days, weeks, and months. And don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you so much.